Hello and welcome to another episode of the Why We Travel podcast. Today's journey takes us to South America, better said to Bolivia, a country that I had the pleasure to visit, and I think it's really fascinating there. So today on the show, Shafik Meghji joins me. He's an award-winning travel writer, journalist, and author based in London, and he's specializing in Latin America and Southeast Asia. He also co-authored more than 40 rough guides and DK Eyewitness Guide. He writes for BBC Travel, Wanderlust, Lonely Planet, Adventure.com, Atlas Obscura, and among others. His latest book, Crossed Off the Map, Travels in Bolivia, was published in March 2022. So it's a really new book, and we will dive into this a little bit more right now in our show. So let's say hello to Shafik. How are you today?
I'm very well, Klaus. All the better for talking to you.
Yeah, give me a bit of an idea where you're coming from, what got you into traveling.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm based in South London, and my background's in journalism. I used to be a news and sports reporter for newspapers here in London. But quite a few years ago, wanderlust set in, and I resigned and I went backpacking around India and South America. And during my time in South America, I fell in love with the continent. I started doing my first travel pieces. And I thought, yeah, this is really what I want to do with my life. So, when I got back to London, I was persistent and knocked on a few doors and sent lots of emails and managed to break into the industry. And since then, over the last 15 years or so, I've been a travel writer, writing guidebooks, writing articles, doing podcasts, doing narrative nonfiction books as well. And it's lucky it's taken me to work on all 7 continents, but I specialized in Latin America and South Asia, which 2 parts of the world I'm really passionate about.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about Bolivia. I have been there, as I said, and I love the country. It's very diverse, has lots to offer. So give me a bit of a background. What was your first impression when you came to Bolivia?
Yeah, so my first time in Bolivia was, just as a backpacker before I was working as a travel writer, and it was in 2004 after I'd resigned from my my news and sports journalism job. And to be honest, I didn't really know much about Bolivia at the time. I wanted to go to Brazil for the Rio Carnival, and then after that, I wanted to go and hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, classic gringo trail stuff. And just the cheapest way to get from Brazil to Peru was to go overland through Bolivia. But as soon as I crossed the border, I started to be captivated by the country, and I kind of, over the coming weeks, I traveled all around. And initially, it was the incredible variety of geography there. I went to the world's biggest salt flat. Went to Lake Titicaca, the world's largest high altitude lake. I went to the depths of the Amazon to explore some of the most biodiverse places on Earth. And I got absolutely captivated by the country at that point. And then, that helped to kickstart my travel writing career. I subsequently started working for Rough Guides. I co-authored the Rough Guide to Bolivia. And that allowed me to explore the country, in incredible depth, over repeated times over the last decade or so. And it was through those trips that gave birth to my latest book, which came out earlier this year, which is Crossed Off the Map, Travels in Bolivia, which is like a narrative nonfiction exploration of this fascinating but underappreciated country.
Mm-hmm. If somebody's planning to go to Bolivia, should they basically have on the list? It's a huge country, has lots to offer. What are the main attractions?
Yeah, I mean the classic attractions, the biggest attractions, and probably the image that most people have of Bolivia is of the Andean side of the country. So that's the Salar de Uyuni, which has been immortalized in countless photos that people will be very familiar with, even if they don't know much about it. That's the world's biggest salt flat, and this is an otherworldly landscape. It's roughly the size of Jamaica. It's incredibly flat. It's blindingly white. It's the whitest place, the brightest place I've ever been in my life, and it's surrounded by these incredible volcanoes, these Andean mountains. You're high up, you're 3,600 meters plus above sea level. It's really a hallucinatory landscape. So that's on lots and lots of people's kind of bucket list adventures, and that's definitely a must visit, not just in Bolivia, but anywhere in Latin America. But Lake Titicaca, as I mentioned before, is a huge draw. One of my favorite things to do there is to visit the island of the sun, which, according to Inca belief, was where the sun, and indeed the Inca mythology, was born. And you can do a wonderful hike around there. It's incredibly scenic. Like a lot of Andean Bolivia, it's very high altitude, so it will wear you out. And then there's loads of fascinating cities like Potosi, which was the site of the richest silver mine on earth. It's also one of the highest cities on earth. You've got Sucre, which is beautiful architecture. Those are all fascinating. And as I say, the Andean side of Bolivia really draws people initially. I always encourage people to kind of explore a bit beyond these kind of these well-known destinations, and particularly to get into the Amazon. So most people think of Bolivia as an Andean country, but a third of it lies within the Amazon basin, and it's easier to visit pristine primary rainforest here than in a lot of other neighboring countries, such as Brazil, for example. And Park National Madidi, which is the most biodiverse protected area on earth, it has thousands and thousands, 8,000 plus species, many of which are found nowhere else on earth. I'm talking about pink river dolphins and anacondas and pumas and incredible bird life. And you can have, incredible explorations there as well. And then if you go over to the east, which is the lowlands, and it's hot and steamy, and there's a lot, it has a lot in common with neighboring Brazil. You have a completely different vibe, and you see a different aspect to the culture. So I always advise people, depending on how much time they have, to maybe start off in the Andes, but definitely make some time to explore both the Amazon and the eastern side of the country as well.
Very good tip. So in regards of time frame, if somebody wants to go for the first time, what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, well, it's the cheats answer would be to go for as long as possible. But obviously, most people maybe have a week or 2 weeks. Not just for Bolivia, but I always advise for everyone, try and pick 2 or 3 things and do them really well, rather than trying to see absolutely everything, because you'll have a much deeper experience for that. And the altitude, which I mentioned several times before, is really something to be aware of. The Andean side of the country, and if you fly into La Paz, you're going to be landing at 4,000 plus meters above sea level. And however old or young you are, however fit you are, altitude will have an impact. So really, it's important to take at least a couple of days to take it easy, acclimatize to the altitude. Don't push yourself too much, don't drink too much alcohol, get plenty of rest, all of these kind of things, and then you'll be able to go off and explore the Salar de Uyuni, the Lake Titicaca, the fantastic ancient ruins of Tiwanaku, a culture that predates the Inca. So you could spend a whole week just exploring the Andean side of it. But if there's one other place, that if you have 2 weeks, or if you're particularly interested in wildlife, I'd really advise making a trip to the Amazon, which is actually surprisingly easy to visit in Bolivia. You can get there from like a half-an-hour flight from La Paz, high in the Andes, takes you across the Andean foothills and into Ruanabaque, which is a remote town, but it's a gateway into Park National Madidi. And you can't get much of a starker contrast between the two places, but it's as I say, Madidi is one of the most important biologically rich places on earth, and it's an absolutely incredible place to explore the rainforests and the pampas and the foothills. It's a magical place, and it's also a place where sustainable tourism and responsible tourism really plays a key role in helping to conserve these ecosystems, and particularly support the indigenous communities that live there. So you can have a positive impact with your tourism as well.
Okay, so you said already you need a plane. What's the preferred way of transport in Bolivia?
Well, it depends on your budget. You can get everywhere on public transport. There's buses and minibuses, in a couple of excellent train routes as well, which are very evocative if you like train journeys. So if you're on a real budget, and also like we all should do, trying to reduce our carbon, impact and so on, you can get everywhere by bus. It is not always comfortable, and it is sometimes takes a long time. So if you're on a shorter trip, unfortunately, internal flights will be a necessary evil. Some people hire motorbikes and travel across Bolivia as well, which is a evocative way to travel as well. And obviously, you can do anything from organized tours to hire a driver and a car for a day. And I think in practice, most people will end up doing a mixture of these things, really. So it depends what your budget is, and it depends how much time you have available.
Okay, tell me a little bit about the Bolivians, about the locals. How are they? What's the vibe? How do you get around with them?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, I was initially captivated by the incredible geography and the diversity of the landscapes there. But kind of as I spent more time in Bolivia over the years, and as I've worked there, you realize the incredible cultural diversity in Bolivia, and it's an absolutely fascinating country, and it's a place where indigenous identities, multiple indigenous identities are to the fore. And one of the great pleasures of visiting the country is to learn and to meet people from different communities, and people are, the cliche within South America is people are a little bit more reserved and maybe less flamboyant or openly than say in Brazil or in Argentina. My experience is people incredibly friendly and welcoming, and for responsible travelers who treat people with respect, you'll get an awful lot out of it. It definitely helps if you can speak a little bit of Spanish. The Spanish in Bolivia is very clear, and it's not too fast and rapid like in some of the neighboring countries. So a few words will go a long way. And I think once you start learning about these incredible cultures and their these long traditions and their histories, and also the challenges that they face historically and continue to face today, you'll get an incredibly rich experience to go with the incredible scenery as well.
Yeah, I found the locals particularly friendly. I jokingly say they are the tiny friendliest people that you ever will meet, because as a Westerner, as a gringo, you always stand out because of your body height. So tell me a little bit. You mentioned food is obviously a topic. Anything particular about the food there? Everything that stands out? Something that you really miss while not being there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredibly diverse. The food that you'll get in the Andean side of the country is very different to the food that you'll get in the eastern lowlands, which has more of a tropical climate and has a lot in common with Brazil. So the Andes, obviously the birthplace of the potatoes, and the variety of potatoes that you get in Bolivia, and the uses to which they are put as well is incredible. So you get very, it's really hearty stews and so on. Llama, llamas are used for a variety of things in Bolivia, from religious practices to carrying, to transportation to food. So I would definitely, anyone in the Andean side of Bolivia should definitely try llama steaks. I really enjoy them. I find they're really tasty. If you go over a bit more to the Amazon side and the region just below the Amazon basin, you get incredible, this is this kind of somewhere like Cochabamba and the Cochabamba Valley. That's the breadbasket of Bolivia. It's got a wonderful climate. The city is known as the city of eternal spring because of the climate, and so many things grow there. So you can have wonderful tropical fruits. You get really good freshwater fish as well. Bolivia, for anyone who's not sure about the geography, is landlocked, but the it has incredible rivers, and it's really, really interesting fish. And if you're up in the Amazon, you'll get weird and wonderful fish that you will not have come across before. And it's often barbecued and served with Amazonian grown fruit and vegetables, which again are many of which you won't have come across before. They're often absolutely packed with kind of with goodness as well. And then if you go over to somewhere like Santa Cruz, so Santa Cruz is the biggest city in Bolivia. It's in the eastern lowlands. It's the economic force, but in that part of the country, it's much more modern. It has a very different vibe. But there you can they have wonderful barbecue restaurants that if you visited Brazil, you might have experienced them as well. Huge kind of meaty kebabs. I mean, this is cattle country, so so meat plays a huge part in it. But again, tropical fruits, are available, and you kind of get stews and stuff. So again, it's a really diverse place, and particularly in the more touristy places, so parts of La Paz, you'll also find restaurants from all over the world. You can find Indian food, you can find Chinese food, and everything. So it's I think kind of go with an open mind and eat everything.
That's a good approach there. Reminds me on Cochabamba, which was a very surprise to me, because I found out they have a Navy Academy there. And you just said it is a landlocked country. So we walked around and were one of a sudden surrounded by Navy officers in their dress, in their uniform. And I was wondering, why is that happening? But obviously Lake Titicaca is a bordering lake and they have boats and ships there. So that was interesting. And also the other thing in Cochabamba is the statue of Christ, where everyone thinks the biggest one is in Rio. No, it's not. It's in Cochabamba. So a lot of surprises there. What was the biggest surprise for you or situation for you in Bolivia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned those two things, because they're both kind of very interesting. Two of the many interesting aspects of Bolivian society. I mean, I think, to be honest, it's the endless diversity of the cultures and of the landscapes. Really, I mean, it's from the an incredibly biologically rich Amazonian rainforest, very, very sparsely populated, bursting with life. And in 2 days later, you can be on, as I say, the world's biggest salt flat, which in some ways is as close to being on another planet as you can get without actually jetting off on in a rocket. It really feels, parts of it feel like a lunar landscape, parts of it are kind of red dusty soil, and it feels a bit like being on the surface of Mars. And the fact that those two places are within the same country, and actually that you can visit within 2 days, and then the next day you can be in a buzzing metropolis, a really modern, vibrant city. It's that diversity that kind of constantly surprised me when I first visited. And one of the great things about Bolivia is that every time you visit, and I've been fortunate to visit, spend a lot of my time there, every time I visit, you learn new things, you see new things, you find out new things. So it's kind of constantly evolving and constantly surprising.
100% agree. La Paz for me is one of the two craziest cities in a certain way, because of the location where it is built. That's already so impressive that it's one of my top cities to visit. I have been there, but I always would recommend to go there. So when it comes to a travel budget, what can people calculate for?
Yeah, so Bolivia is one of the cheaper countries in South America once you've got there. Now, getting there from Europe, particularly, can be a bit pricey. International long-haul airline prices are expensive generally at the moment. It's often cheaper to fly via the US and get a connecting flight down there. But once you're actually in Bolivia, it's a very affordable place. If you're coming from many other parts of the world, it's much cheaper than in Brazil, Chile, or Argentina, or even Peru, for example. So it's a rough budget. If you have $50 a day, you can get by on that, and as I say, public transport and basic accommodation and food are all very affordable, and you can good street food and all of this kind of stuff. So you can travel on a shoestring budget. The places where it adds up is obviously internal flights and some tours as well. And I would always advise kind of thinking carefully about tours, particularly in the Salar de Uyuni and in the Amazon, because there can often be a great variety, and the cheapest tour is often the false economy. And also, you can have a very positive impact. Travelers and tourists can have a positive or negative impact with the way they spend their money when they're abroad, and that's particularly true in somewhere like Bolivia. So I would always say, don't be tempted by if it seems too good to be true, the price seems too good to be true. It isn't true. And so kind of do a bit of research, and particularly look to go with locally run travels and tour companies, and particularly in the Amazon, indigenous run tour companies, because then you can really kind of ensure that you're having a positive impact. So those kind of tours can sometimes add a bit more, but it's a very economical place to travel around.
Okay, Shafik, you have written a book about Bolivia. Tell me a little bit more about the book and what people can expect from your book.
Yeah, so Crossed Off the Map Travels in Bolivia is kind of like a narrative travel log, and it kind of combines travel writing and journalism and history. The initial spark was my very first visit to Bolivia back in 2004. And as I say, as I started working for Rough Guides, to co-author the Rough Guide to Bolivia, it gave me the great excuse to visit virtually every part of the country and spend extended periods there, and to really immerse myself in the country and its culture. And so initially I thought, this is just, it's a place that doesn't get a lot of coverage, particularly in the English language media. There hadn't been a very recent travel book written about it. And I thought, it's just, people be interested in hearing about, the world's most dangerous road, the world's highest city, the world's largest salt flat, the world's, richest silver mine, the world's largest high altitude lake, the world's most biodiverse national park, all of which are found in Bolivia. So that was my initial idea for the book. But then as I kind of started delving into the history a bit more, I found that, this country that, lots of people outside of Latin America wouldn't be able to place on a map, has actually had like a profound impact on the modern world. It's kind of the riches that that were extracted from it helped to power the Industrial Revolution and fund the Great Wall of China. And to take one example. So I thought, well, look, this is a fascinating history. Let's try and explore that as well. And then I was also traveling there throughout the 2010s. Fortunately for me, at a time of great social and political and economic change in Bolivia. Bolivia is on the front line of issues like the climate emergency. There's been huge amounts of climate migration there. It's been very affected by the war on drugs. It's had to deal with populism. It has to deal with like national identity and indigenous rights. Lots of the issues that are important to all of us around the world. But Bolivia it seemed to be on the front line, and it seemed to be dealing with a lot of these issues before many of us were really in other parts of the world were properly aware of them. So the book kind of looks both back at the fascinating history, and it looks at the contemporary challenges the country is facing, and it follows my explorations around the country, and really it also tries to share the voices of some of the incredible, fascinating people that I've met in every part of the country who have interests and experiences and histories and and opinions, and I've tried to share them with the reader, and really convey my my enthusiasm and love for this this wonderful but underappreciated country.
No, definitely, it's a beautiful country. It has beautiful, very, very friendly people, and I would highly recommend anyone to go there. Where can people find out more about your book and yourself?
So I'm easy to find. My website is shafikmeghji.com, and that has more information on the book, and it has links to my social media channels. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and so on, at Shafik Meghji. And you can also see some of my writing on Bolivia. Done quite a few pieces for BBC Travel and Wanderlust recently, which will give you a flavour of the book, and will hopefully get a few more people hooked and inspired to visit Bolivia in the future.
Okay, I will put the link in the show notes, and you're just one click away. I think, Shafik, you're a great ambassador for Bolivia, and I hope that a lot of people will put this country on their travel map. Thanks so much for your time, and talk soon.
My absolute pleasure. Wonderful to talk to you, Klaus.
Hey, Klaus here. Before you leave, I have a question. Are you a traveler? Do you have a favorite travel destination or favorite travel experiences that you would like to share with the world? Then become a guest on the Why We Travel podcast. Simply message me, and I will get you all the details for becoming an interview guest, and then we take it from there. That's it for now. I see you in the next episode, and have a great day.